Majoring in philosophy, is it a death sentence for your career? Let's ask some of my former students. I'm Christopher Annadale, and this is Life After Philosophy. Welcome to Life After Philosophy. My guest today is Father Justin Bolger. He is a Dominican friar and currently the chaplain and director of campus ministry at Providence College in Rhode Island. He entered the novitiate for the Dominican Province of St. Joseph in 2012 and graduated from Mount St. Mary's University in 2013 with a Master of Arts in Philosophical Studies degree. He received his B.T.S. and Masters of Divinity from the Pontifical Faculty of the Immaculate Conception in 2018 and his S.T.L. in 2020. He was also ordained a Catholic priest in 2020. He is also a musician of some note. He writes and produces music for a musical preaching initiative, the Hillbilly Thomists. They have recorded 3 albums, 2 of which have reached the top 5 of the Bluegrass Billboard charts. They have played the Grand Ole Opry in Nashville. While a student brother, he also helped record 4 albums of sacred music with the schola at the Dominican House of Studies. And before entering the Dominican Order, he worked in the music industry and was signed with RCA Victor. Father Justin, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much, Dr. Annandale. Great to be here.
It's great to be in touch with you again after our time together more than a decade ago. And as you know, the theme of the podcast is, what are people doing after completing a philosophy degree? You certainly have moved really far down the road, both musically, professionally, and vocationally. What's been the role of philosophy in all of that, looking back at it now?
Yeah, great question. Well, where do we start? I really, you mentioned my kind of musical career before becoming a Dominican. So after undergrad, I graduated from University of Baltimore. I played music with my sister for about 7 years, and I just wanted to change. And I was thinking about the priesthood as well, but I really wanted to study again. And this job at Mount St. Mary's kind of like landed in my lap in a sense. And the job was directing music ministry at Mount St. Mary's in the Office of Campus Ministry. But I could also study. And because I was working full time, I was also assisting something called the Center for the Advancement of Catholic Higher Education, also called CASH, a cool acronym there. And so I was working full time at Mount St. Mary's so I could study as well. And I was really excited about this because I wanted to do something different. So I liked this music ministry, but I also wanted to study, and I could now study philosophy because of this program that you taught in. So so I got into that, and I really loved it. It was kind of what I needed, what I wanted at the time, and maybe in one sense, it just kind of awakened in me, a love of and fulfillment of the life of the mind. And I got an introduction to that just by studying in kind of a general way, different themes and eras of philosophy, right? So we did ancient, medieval, modern, and then epistemology, morals, and it was just really exciting. And then that kind of was a great way to set me up for my further studies as a Dominican, where I studied more philosophy and theology, of course. So philosophy, then, I think it's just been, it was a great boon for me at a certain time in my life, but also set me up for further studies as a Dominican. And I really look fondly upon the time that I had at Mount St. Mary's to study, and especially your teaching. I really
It's very kind of you. I remember when you went away, you and a couple other fellows went away for your Dominican novitiate in the middle of the program. But it sounds like the way you're describing it here, this was a kind of ongoing development. Your previous education, your music career, now working in music at Mount St. Mary's, and then taking classes also on the side, then discerning into the Dominicans going through novitiate and vows there. How did that then play into some of your later education? I see I was just reading out, you've gotten 2 or 3 degrees since I last saw you.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the typical seminary education, you do some philosophy and then you go into theology. So Bachelor of Sacred Theology is what we do at the Pontifical Faculty of the Immaculate Conception in DC, where our province has our seminary, so to speak, our House of Studies.
Hmm.
And then most of us go on to get a license in sacred theology, so an S.T.L. So I got those degrees, which is kind of the normal course of things for a Dominican in our province. But my preparation at the Mount, like I said, I think it just kind of instilled in me a great of love of truth, and also some of my experiences at the Mount. Like I said, I worked at the Center for the Advancement of Catholic Higher Education, and I started connecting a little bit of what I was studying in philosophy. So we read some Newman,
Hmm.
idea of a university, and seeing what that had to do with Catholic higher education. So I started thinking about those questions when I was at the Mount and connecting what I was studying with what I was working on in that center. And then now as a Dominican, of course, again, you do a lot of philosophy and metaphysics and theology in seminary studies. But this has also set me up working out of college, which I'm doing right now. And so I see, certainly God's providence at work in kind of introducing me to texts and certain ideas and ways to connect ideas to life, and especially in the context of a university. So doing that then, and I'm doing that now in a more intentional way here as chaplain and director of campus ministry.
What is campus chaplaincy like? Is it something like being a pastor, being a counselor and advisor, or would you think it has a certain kind of teaching element to it, maybe both theological and philosophical? How do you see your role relative to the students you're chaplain for?
Yeah, good question. So the chaplain, yeah, I would say in one sense it's like a pastor of a school.
Hmm.
I'm in charge of directing the life of prayer for our school. We've got 4,000 undergrads, a lot of staff and faculty, a couple hundred grad students. And my office it's a good location. It's right below the main chapel, right below the tabernacle. So good place to be. That's where our campus ministry center is. So yeah, I direct the life of prayer, try to coordinate the life of prayer on campus, in the chapel, of course, but also throughout the campus, and offering blessings to different offices around the beginning of the year, around Epiphany, trying to direct the life of prayer in the dorms, trying to direct hall team chaplains in the ways that they minister to our different athletic teams. So I
Right.
kind of have a hand in this, and also in just directing our campus ministry staff. So yeah, it's kind of pastor, a little bit of a boss as well. I got to do boring things like HR reports and supervision of staff members. But it's a real joy and it's a real blessing to be able to do all that. I mean, we could go for a while just kind of talking about what a day looks like, because there's celebrating mass, the sacraments, directing staff, but also just being there for students and being in students' lives. And I try to tell my staff, wasting time with students is not time wasted, really,
Right.
because that's really part of our job. It's just being there for our students, accompanying them, being a pastor, but also just listening to them, where they are right now, because as you can imagine, students are all over the place and where they are with the Lord and in their career. So it's a great joy to be able to do all this, to direct campus ministry and be a chaplain.
Yeah, let me ask you a question about that. I have asked other priests that I've interviewed on this podcast a question which I associate in the dim recesses of my memory with our mutual friend Monsignor Stuart Swetland,
Hmm.
who I think either he or someone I've confused with him told me once that a lot of young people today have questions that they might bring to a priest or a chaplain or a pastor, which are as much or more philosophical questions than they are theological questions. They're questions about the nature of truth or the possibility of human excellence or how can I determine what virtue is, how to design my life in a way that's something more than just the product of my will. Is that something you found reflected in your years of campus ministry so far?
Hmm. Yeah, definitely. There are those questions about yeah, truth in general. I mean, it's interesting. Our motto up here at Providence College is Veritas, truth. So we
Excellent.
are um, we're interested in talking about it and promoting it, of course, uh, truth in what you study, but we're also proposing that, truth is a person. And so a lot of students, yeah, we'll have questions about that. And so yeah, we could go into that. But one thing I do notice, I don't know, it seems like a lot of students also just want to think about God too. So this is, yeah, this is philosophical. It's also theological. A lot of our students will study the five ways of Aquinas and come to terms with the question of God. And I hear, especially through our RCIA program, which we've got a lot of students in that, over 30 this year and last year, a lot of baptisms. So students coming to terms with that, with is God real? And if he is, who is he, and does he love me? So I would say there are those existential kind of theological questions as well that I encounter. We do all kinds of things in campus ministry. One of the things we do is we have service trips, and so we took a service trip to Guatemala, and there was a student who was just kind of like dead set against the church. And she wanted to go on this trip. She thought it'd be fun. She likes serving,
Hmm.
but she thought, the church is against me. I'm against the church. And through this service, this experience of faith-based service, she really did a 180 and began to see the truth of, yeah, that human dignity, why we serve the poor, those in need. These questions are ultimately answered in the rich tradition of the church and her social teaching. And but it was through that experience of serving along other faith-filled people, besides working along with a friar, reflecting on what they were doing in light of the faith, that she had this conversion experience. And so now she's in RCIA, which is really, really beautiful. But I definitely see these. I mean, in one sense, I would wish for more kind of like articulate philosophical discussions here, but I'll take existential ones too. Just who am I? Who is God? Does he love me? Can I know him? And so those are some of the questions that I encounter a lot. I think, especially as chaplain.
Yeah, certainly that existential relevance, those questions, those sort of core existential questions. I associate that with part of what John Paul talks about in Fides et Ratio. That's the kind of driving power, I think, for modern people who maybe
Mhm.
don't start with a kind of cultural intellectual framework, but with having to live my life in a situation of fairly radical and somewhat threatening freedom and options that are all over the place and worries about commitment. Do you find that there's any kind of relevance of your philosophy education to vocation talks that you have with people? I mean, you followed a vocation that's pretty determinate. I mean, I'm seeing you right now. You're wearing the white robes of your order. You've committed yourself to a way of life that you wouldn't have 15 years ago, perhaps. What kind of relevance do you see there, either in your own story or in conversations you have with people who are sort of on their way towards or discerning a vocation?
Well, some basic questions of philosophy revolve around the question or the issue of happiness. So, how can I be happy? Who am I? What kind of thing am I as a human person? And if I do want to be happy, it seems like most people do want that. Most of us. Well, what are some responses to that question? And philosophy, the history of philosophy, has a lot of great responses to that question, right? And many of them are competing, but you can study that. And what I like about philosophy, or my path in philosophy, again, especially beginning at Mount St. Mary's, although some of these questions are just questions that everyone asks, everyone's a philosopher to some degree, is that these are not dead questions. These are not just kind of trifling conversations. These questions can guide your life. And so it really depends on how you answer them. And philosophy is, this love of wisdom that can also shape the way you think about your life, and shape the way you actually live. So this is just a great advantage of taking seriously these kinds of questions, especially the question of happiness. What is the meaning of life? Who am I? Philosophy can shed light on this question, give you good answers so that you can live a certain way. And so I just found that to be the case in my life. I really loved studying philosophy, but I loved, reading Aristotle and reading Aquinas, reading these philosophical questions in light of the faith, because it made things make sense for me and gave me a path that I was confident in. That there is truth. We can be certain about that. We can stake our lives on that. There are good answers to these questions. So yeah, I've seen philosophy in my own life kind of serve me in that way.
That's a fantastic answer. Thank you. I've wondered especially about the case of vowed religious with a visible habit and a style of life that really does communicate to everyone who sees them a certain type of very definitive commitment, because it seems to me, at least for some of the young people that I meet, there is a kind of uncertainty and perhaps fear or almost a kind of bewilderment. But how would I even know if I were called, or if this were the thing for me, this path instead of another, the one including one that radically narrows my sense of freedom.
Mhm.
So I'm always interested in the kind of way in which people throw themselves into the life that they're now living, because it seems to me that that's where we become happy, is in
Mhm.
living that kind of life.
Yeah, that's right. And that, I think that's something that we noted. I'm sure you do, but there is maybe a reticence to throw oneself into life. And we could talk about maybe one contemporary thinker I like a lot, Matthew Crawford, speaks about safetyism, which kind of, I think, is all over the place these days, and we experience in different ways, different modes. But it can, the promise of safety, or the maybe safety as an ideal, can limit you, right? And undermine, I think, your potential. And so religious life is certainly, it's a radical way of living. Now, of course, we have to think about talk about God's grace, that if he's going to call you, he's going to give you the grace to do it.
Right.
And so there is the importance of seeing this all under God's providence and his grace. And this life is an adventure, and adventures are fun, adventures are dangerous. The road, you don't know what's going to happen along the road. There's a great line from the Lord of the Rings, I think. It's where Gandalf says something like that to Frodo. Mm-hmm. Dangerous setting out your front door and setting out on the road. It's a dangerous thing, and that's right. But that's precisely where life happens. And so, yeah, the witness, I guess, of the habit and religious life, hopefully speaks into that too, into this kind of maybe reticence that we see to commit oneself to something. I'm fortunate to work and serve and live with like 35 other friars here. So we're around every day, our students teaching, serving in administration, and I hope that besides just serving, it's that we can also be a sign that you can really give yourself to something. You can lay down your life for something, and it can lead to a happy life. It's a good life.
Yeah, I do miss that from my time working with the Benedictines, is having a religious order on campus and interacting with them daily, and it does. I think it does have an effect upon the tone and the feeling that you have. There is a kind of visual witness.
Yeah, that's right. I was just thinking, because we do see sort of a downturn in vocations, but in marriage as well. And
yes.
and marriage is an adventure. I think whatever vocation God is calling you to is going to be good, and it's it's going to be, yes, it's going to be dangerous and involve suffering, but it's going to be if you lay down your life and give yourself to it, it's going to be a good life. It's going to be a happy life.
Yeah, I was going to steal your point from earlier, and you said this reticence to commit might undermine your potential, and I was thinking of some work I was doing on Norris Clark video just earlier this morning, and I was thinking actually maybe the better way to say it is it undermines your actuality, because it's in the actuality of your life where you sort of convert this seemingly vast potential that you have especially when you're young, when your options are all open. You convert it into something definitive. That's scary, that's frightening. It involves giving up the opportunities you don't actualize. But that's precisely where, in a commitment to marriage or to a vocation or to a profession, a career, to the military, to wherever one's called, that's precisely where the living of life happens. And it's tough to compare the pleasures of actuality to the sort of pleasure of hoarding your potentiality.
Yeah, that's really good. That's right. It undermines act, and as we know from Aristotle and Aquinas, that's where virtue and happiness really lies. And it's an activity. Virtue is an activity.
Right. Yeah. Don't want to waver like Hamlet before every decision.
That's right.
Let me ask you about your music ministry. You described to me the Hillbilly Thomists as a kind of ministry or musical outreach. I've heard of them, in the years since. It's been really fun to follow their career. What would you share with us about what it's like to be, one of the Hillbilly Thomists, to be making music in that setting, in that environment? I don't know much about it other than what I see sort of when I read online about what you guys are doing, your albums and your shows.
Yeah, so that's been another providential thing in my life. Like I said, played a lot of music before entering the order. And as we're speaking, you don't know where life is going to go. So I didn't know where my musical gifts would go, and this experience that I had, but right away started recording albums for our schola, so sacred music. We did, like I said, we did about 4 of those, but we got kind of bored with that. And there were a number of us who played bluegrass, folk music, and we would just jam. We'd play at parties and for an ordination or for solemn vow, something like that. He said, well, we should really just record an album, because we were using our albums as fundraisers for our student tape for the Dominican House of Studies in DC. And so we did that with an album. We said, okay, we're going to record some bluegrass and folk standards, and it shot to number 3 in the Billboard charts for bluegrass.
Wow.
So we weren't expecting that, and it was funny. We got a call one day. Someone from Billboard, I think, called the House of Studies. They said, okay, well, we have this number for this band. I think they reside here at this institution. Can someone help me find someone I can talk to about what's going on here? This is very strange. And yeah, so there are, and I think a couple weeks later, we got an invitation to like America's Got Talent or something like that, which we
wow.
did. So we get since then we've been playing mostly just recording. We like to write music. A number of us are songwriters. I've always written music from a young age. I've enjoyed writing songs, and so continue to do so. But in this context with my fellow friars, about 7 or 8 of us playing old-timey music, bluegrass, folk. And so we've recorded 3 albums, and just finished the 4th, so that'll be out soon. And working on a Christmas album, because of course you have to eventually sell out and record a Christmas album.
Well, that's great. I'm sure.
Yeah, you're not a real artist until you do that. So, but we're trying to stay away from kind of the grandma got run over by a reindeer repertoire, and keep it more, I don't know, contemplative.
Do you do live shows still, or is it mostly
We do a little bit of that, yeah. So we did one tour, like you mentioned, we played at the Grand Ole Opry, which was wild. That was for a Knights of Columbus event. It was their national annual conference in Nashville.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, the Gaylord Opryland. And so they kicked the thing off with a concert. Because Craig Morgan was the headliner at the Grand Ole Opry, but they let us warm up. So we did a 30-minute set there. That was amazing. And we did another 6 or 7 shows during that tour. So that was the first time we had done that. And it was great because we just got to meet folks who love our music and have great stories to share about our music in these different cities. And we're going to do something similar again in the Southeast this summer. So week and a half of shows there as well.
That's
and
great. I look forward to that.
Yeah, so it's been great just to be able, again, to make music with my fellow friars, but also to see kind of an evangelical effect of the music in people's lives. Even people hearing about conversions, people who wow. Really, the music really means a lot to them, and they can see their life and God's love in a new way. So I've been very humbled and happy doing that.
That's fantastic. Thanks for sharing that. That's really amazing. Let me ask you, if I may, the question of the show, which is, what kind of advice would you offer to a college student, whether it's one of yours or perhaps one of mine, who's considering further study in philosophy, who's interested but not really sure yet whether they've got the bug, is wondering whether it's worthwhile, worth the risk of investing a few more courses or making the effort to get deeper into philosophy, based upon your experience up to now? What kind of advice would you give to such a person?
I would say that philosophy gives you longevity. Of course, theology does as well, but philosophy gives you longevity. And what I mean is, you can study, you can get a business degree, you can get a computer science degree, and those can have good practical effects in your life. You might be able to get a job right away, but the principles often that you study in kind of a more practical field, such as business or computer science, they're going to change because technology changes, right? Ways of doing business changes, and you always have to keep up on that. And you can study that too and learn, the new systems, new technology. But that stuff shifts. The principles of philosophy don't shift. This question of happiness, this is a perennial question. There are really good answers to it. Philosophy can help you find those answers and can guide the whole of life. And so that's one reason why I encourage students to study philosophy, because you're going to get deep answers about the meaning of your life. And besides also just the ways it can help you think and write. So these are good. But you're gonna have principles for life, and this has a practical effect in your life as well, right? Because you're going to be able to make good decisions about what's next. What should I do? What will really make me happy? So there is a practical side to it, but I would say mostly longevity.
Thanks very much. I think that's a great place for us to conclude. Thank you so much, Father Justin, for agreeing to appear with me today. My guest today has been Father Justin Bolger, a Dominican friar and the chaplain and director of campus ministry at Providence College. Father, thanks again.
Thanks so much, Dr. Anno. Great to talk to you.
Thank you for listening to Life After Philosophy. If you enjoyed the podcast, please rate it 5 stars and share this episode with a friend. I appreciate your support.